Well, hi again. Welcome to Chess-Based Workshop. I'm Steve Lopez with another installment. We've been looking at opening training, the opening training feature in Fritz, as we saw in the last video. This time around, we're going to look at how to create your own opening training database. What you will find about opening training, first of all, is it is just a database. There's nothing special about it, other than the game list is set up so that the names of the openings are in there instead of the names of the players. That's all there is to it. It's just a database of games. In fact, you can change the database that you use for opening training by going to the application menu, going to options, going to training right here, and then it says opening training. You can click the browse button and select a different database. However, what this does, what this suggests to us, first of all, is that we can create our own opening training database, and we certainly can. That's what we're going to talk about today. Don't just throw any old database in as an openings training database, because your game list, when you go to openings training, when you go up here, if you just throw any old database in, you're going to have player names here. You're not going to know what opening it is you're supposed to be playing. It doesn't look at the game and pop the name of the opening in for you. So it doesn't work. You can't just open up Mega Database or any other database and have this work. But you can create your own. The first step to creating your own opening database, obviously, is to create a database. That's what we're going to do now. Is we're going to go up here. We're going to click the application menu, go to New Database. Here's the folder that has these games in it, by the way. The complete path, excuse me, for most users will be your C drive. Unless you change it, the C drive, then depending on what version of Windows you have, Program Files or Program Files x86, then a chess-based folder, then a training folder. That's where you'll find these databases. I'm going to create it. I'm going to imaginatively name it Openings 02. Left out the S. Openings 02 and click Create New. No games found. We haven't put any in it yet. No kidding. So we'll get out of that game list. Now, this is an important step you're going to want to do to prevent embitterment. What I have found is that on some computers, and it varies with what computer you got, what version of Windows you've got, what service pack for the version of Windows you've got, sometimes you'll enter a game, you'll put in your 8-move variation that you want to practice, you'll go to save it, and Fritz won't let you. It will tell you that the database is still in use, even though really it's not. Okay, so what you want to do at this point is exit out of Fritz, just completely get out of it, and then restart the software, which is what I'm going to do now. But to save a little time in this video, I'm actually going to stop, and there's going to be a fade, and it's going to fade back up, and I'll be back. But I'm going to get out of Fritz and then come back into the software to make sure that I'll be able to save the game. And again, this seems to be a Windows thing, depending on what version and service pack of Windows you have. I've had some computers, I have multiple computers. Some it happens, some it doesn't. So just be on the safe side, back out of the software, and then come back into it. All right, we're back. I've backed out of Fritz and come back in again, and now we're ready to start putting in some moves for an opening that we want to practice. The first thing you want to do is click New Game. Second thing you want to do is go to the Engine menu and select Switch Off Engine. If you don't do that, when you make a move, Fritz will respond. Fritz will make a move in reply, and it's not going to be what you want. It's going to make a move of some other opening, obviously. So to make moves for both sides, you're going to want to switch off the engine. Okay? Then you can just start making some moves. I'm going to crack a book here. Give me a second while I go to the page I've bookmarked, because I want to put in some variations of the Smith-Morra Gambit, which is what I want to practice. So we play this, 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 and what was the variation I was looking at here? Give me a moment here while I find Black's fourth move, which is this. Then White's next move is this, this, and then this. There we go. So we have the first 6 moves of the Smith-Morra Gambit accepted. Now, if we also want to put in some other moves of the Smith-Morra Gambit declined, we can do that. We can put in a separate variation at this point, which would be at this move for Black. Hit the T key on the keyboard. Look for the letter T. Hit T, takes back a move and allows you to put in something different without getting a pop-up asking you if that's what you really want to do. So we'll pop this in at this point. Look, we have a new variation right here. And we'll just make another move here. Knight comes here. White comes here. And Black plays this. And what this actually does, it transposes into an Alpine Sicilian, so you need to know a little bit about C3 if you're going to play the Smith-Morra. Now we're ready to save the game. What you want to do is come back up here to the application menu, come down here to save, and instead of picking save, pick save game as right here. Go one farther down. Don't go to save, go to save game as, and that will allow you to pick a database to save it into, which is openings 02. Remember, we just created this database. Click that, and I will pick Smith-Morra Gambit. I don't need to put a year, month, and day in there. It's not important. And then we can go ahead and click OK. And the game is now saved. Look here, and it's got my name as default annotator, etc. Now, we want to go ahead and use this as opening training. Now, I would go in, if I was doing this for real and not doing a video, of course, I would go in and put in 5 or 6 other openings that I want to study. And by the way, let me take a step back for a second and tell you that the way you structure these games, when you go in and use this game for opening training with Fritz, when it gets to Black's third move, will randomly pick between capturing the pawn or playing the knight. It will just randomly go back and forth between either accepting or declining the gambit. There's a bunch of different things you can do here. One of them, how you structure your opening training is really up to you. I could have put this in as 2 separate games in the database. I could have had the Smith-Morra Gambit accepted, which is the main line. I could have put this variation line in as a separate game, Smith-Morra Gambit declined. There's no right or wrong way to do this. You can either pick accepted, you could put them in as 2 separate games and then have the choice of picking between accepted and picking declined, or I can just pick Smith-Morra Gambit and let Fritz throw at me what it will, just the way my opponent would. That's why I did it this way. However, if you would like to have a preference for Fritz, that it prefers one particular opening over another, you can play around with preferences here, and the way you do it is through diacritical marks. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Most of my opponents will accept the gambit. So let's say that I want Fritz primarily to play Smith-Morra Gambit accepted. I would right-click on D, take C3, come down here, and give it an exclamation mark. And what that means is that Fritz will be twice as likely to play D take C3 as knight F6. If I want Fritz to be 3 times as likely to play D take C3, I can right-click, come down here, and give it 2 exclams, and now it's 3 times as likely to play knight F6. Or if I decide that I don't want it to play the Smith-Morra Gambit accepted, which makes me question why I would put it in there in the first place. But if later on I decide that I don't want that to ever come up, I can right-click, come down here, and select a question mark, or 2 question marks, and it just flat won't play it ever again. It'll jump right to knight F6. So you can change the likelihood of either of these 2 variations coming up, or you can just put them in as separate games in the database. It's entirely your choice. But now, how do I make this new database my default opening training database? Well, we'll show you how to do that. Come up here to the application menu, click on it, come down here to options. As we've seen before, you click on the training tab, opening training. Here's where it's at. You can click the browse button. Here's openings 02, which is the database I just saved this game into. I can click open, click OK. And now the default opening training database is here. Click opening training. Notice now I only have one option, Smith-Morra Gambit. And as we saw in the last video, I have all the different choices that I had before. I can, detailed isn't going to matter in this database. But learn moves, I can click on that, and I'll have to play these moves in exact sequence to get to this position, or else our old pal Leo is going to pop up, and the coach will pop up and tell me, you made the wrong move, what do you want to do here? I can also change sides. I can play both sides of the gambit if I want to. Because I just play the white side of this, I'm not a black Sicilian player. I wouldn't even bother with that. But I can either opt to play through that sequence of moves, or assuming that I and most of my opponents wind up playing this sequence, I can just jump to it. However, if I do the learn moves and click OK, as we saw before, once I'm playing through this game, Fritz will randomly pick between D takes C3 and knight F6. I have noticed, as I've used this feature, that Fritz does tend to favor the main line a little bit, just by virtue of the fact that it's the main line, but it will randomly pick between those two openings here, the main line or the variation line. But it does tend to favor the main line a little bit, and as we've seen, you can go in and make it favor it even more. Change its tendencies by using exclamation, double exclamation, or a question mark to alter its picks here. But that's basically how you do it. I know I kind of blew through it fairly quickly. Go back and watch the video again to follow through the steps to learn how to do this. It's a cool thing. It allows you to custom tailor the openings training to your own repertoire. While, for example, if I go back here and go to options and go back to the default, which you can do, by the way, this is another thing, is you're not locked into this. You can always go back to the openings database that came with the software and click open. Go to opening training, and there's your full list again the way you had it before. Notice, by the way, I did start my own opening database. There's a reason why I did this. I could absolutely, without any problem, add openings to this existing database if I wanted to. I can totally do that. The problem that I have with that is very simply that if I add games to this database and later I have to reinstall Fritz, I may accidentally overwrite the modified database with the original version, and all the openings that I would have put in there will now be gone. So I prefer to start a new database. And I can also toggle and tweak and play around with that database. I can delete games, add more games. As my repertoire changes, as my repertoire develops, as it evolves, I can add and remove games from my own database and not even touch this. But for example, the Benoni, that doesn't happen in my games because I'm not a D4 player, and I don't play the Benoni as black, so I don't need that. That's not something that I need to fool around with. That's why I started my own database. However, the cool part is if I ever decide I want to adopt the Benoni, it's here. I can practice it in the openings training. You know, Aliekin's defense, that's useful. I throw out E4 once in a while. Somebody will play Aliekin's defense, so that's useful to me. But some of these other ones I'm never going to touch unless I really alter my my opening repertoire. So that's why I decided to go over here, create a new database, and then later come down here after I put some games in it, come down here to options, click browse, and just select the one that I created. And after I add some more openings to it, I'll have a much more detailed, tailored to my repertoire opening training where I can practice moves, or again, just leave that unchecked, click OK, and it'll jump me right to that position. And now, since I'm the white player here, I'm practicing this as white, I can hit the space bar or go to move now and have Fritz pop out a move there. If I click new game, of course, notice what it did. It jumped. It randomized where it jumped to the Smith-Marr Gambit declined, which is pretty cool too. So there's two different openings here in this particular game. You saw there were two different variations. When I click new game, it jumped to the other one. Pretty cool. That's how you do it. You can tailor your opening training to your own repertoire by creating your own database. Till next time, for Chess Base Workshop, I'm Steve Lopez, reminding you to please do have fun.